Delegates at the just-ended NDC National Delegates Congress have elected Johnson Asiedu Nketia to lead a team of executives that will steer the party's affairs to the 2024 polls. Mr. Asiedu Nketia, popularly known as General Mosquito, beat his closest contender and immediate past chairman Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo by clinching 5,569 votes. Mr. Ofosu-Ampofo obtained 2,892 votes, while Yao Eduse had 52 votes. Nilanti Amashite received 38 votes. In his victory speech, the new chairman said he and his team are prepared to sacrifice their lives to free Ghanaians. There's more in this report.
The main event started with speeches from the leadership of the NDC to about 9,000 delegates gathered at the Accra Sports Stadium. It was clear from the start that candidates had discarded the bitter rivalry that characterized campaigns in the build-up to the election. Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo hit heavily on unity among members.
A snake that you can see does not bite. We can see ourselves as NDC members, so we cannot and must not bite one another. I guess what the proverb forgot to add is that a mosquito that you can see can also not bite. Fellow party members, where there is love, there is no darkness. So our elder says, and how true a statement it is, we should focus on our collective good by extension of the good of Ghana.
Johnson Asiedu Nketia, in his submission, failed to address his controversial viral tape about his party going to court on the 2020 elections without figures. Instead, he sang the praises of his party and ended by apologizing to people he may have offended as General Secretary.
Let me say a word of farewell to you as I step down today as your General Secretary, having served in that position for the past 17 years. I want to thank you for your cooperation, and I want to thank everybody. Those who have offended, may the Lord touch your heart to forgive me.
Well, former President John Dramani Mahama reiterated his unbiased stance towards candidates, stating clearly he didn't have any favorites.
I wish also at this juncture to repeat my position of neutrality in the various contests. Let me say again that I do not have any preferred candidate for any position, and I urge all delegates to vote based on your own appreciation of the messages of aspirants and their conviction about their capacity to work in the larger interest of the party.
After long hours of voting, a major surprise emerged. Former Propaganda Secretary Fifi Fiavi Kwete came up tops against incumbent Deputy General Secretary Peter Boama Otukuno and Elvis Efriye Ankra. But will he return the NDC to Act?
We clearly must leave every option on the table. We should be able to understand that the fact that we have had one way of doing it does not always mean the same way must continue. So I would say all options must remain on the table, but it's a decision we must collectively come to, not just in terms of the functional executive of the party, but the broader political leadership of the party. I would think that the options must remain very open.
Candidate number 2, Fifi Fiavi Kwete.
And at the crowning moment, Johnson Asiedu Nketia is named chairman of the party.
We are prepared to sacrifice everything, and I mean everything, including our lives, to make sure that this country is delivered.
Delegates are hopeful this new team for the NDC will win the 2024 election.
Former President John Dramani Mahama is worried about the stance taken by President Akufo-Addo on funding for the country. The National Democratic Congress leader finds it morally questionable that Nana Akufo-Addo is able to urge other African leaders against begging when the country is just going for a bailout from the IMF. During the opening of the U.S.-Africa Leadership Summit in Washington, D.C. earlier this week, the president told fellow countries on the continent to wean themselves off begging the West to earn global respect and change poor perceptions about the continent.
Meanwhile, several individuals and pensioners cannot guarantee that they will be alive by 2037 to see the final 41% maturity of their principal. Our dear country Ghana, that has been a poster boy of democracy, good governance, and economic progress, stands on the brink of bankruptcy and economic ruin. Yet, we have a president who enjoys spouting the rhetoric of self-respect and restraint from begging Western nations for support. And yet he has spent the last several weeks on the telephone with Western leaders, asking them to beg the IMF to grant Ghana the recently announced staff-level agreement for an extended credit facility. Our dear nation has never been so put to shame and come close to being a beggar nation as we are today. And yet, this is the same person who only yesterday said, Ghana enye ohiamai, yet isikaso ekom dear.
Meanwhile, Minority Leader in Parliament Haruna Idrisu has chastised President Akufo-Addo over his comments on the Russian mercenary group in Washington. According to him, President Akufo-Addo did not exercise good judgment in his comments. Mr. Idrisu said the president, who had previously served as Attorney General and Foreign Affairs Minister, should have known better not to make such irresponsible and unprofessional comments. The Tamale South lawmaker said the comments could have dire repercussions on the country should Russia decide to take an action against us. Speaking at the NDC Congress on Saturday, Mr. Idrisu disclosed that the minority will demand a detailed briefing on his comment.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we address this Congress, President Nana Addo Dankwa has not only failed by creating an economic mess, he has also gone ahead to create what you call a foreign policy crisis for our country. Those of you who listen to President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, former Foreign Minister of our Republic, former Attorney General, he simply failed momentarily to have impulse control and to ensure balance between foreign policy and the security of our state, when he openly condemned Burkina Faso and mentioned the Wagner Group of Russia. I have information that our ranking member of Foreign Affairs and our members on the Foreign Affairs Committee will ask for detailed briefing to Parliament on this reckless, irresponsible, and unprofessional statement by the President of our Republic. If he cannot provide us with food, he should not let them bring guns on us as a country.
And still on the NDC, a former Deputy General Secretary of the party, Kojo, has denied claims that there is a rift between him and his former boss, Johnson Asiedu Nketia, popularly known as General Mosquito. Speaking on Joy News, Mr. Anyido disclosed that in spite of his issues with the party, he was called by Mr. Nketia to join a committee that would facilitate the nomination of a flag bearer for the 2020 general elections.
On that, yes. But you still haven't answered my question. Do you have any pain against these people?
No. We went for, last year, November, we went for Congress in trade fair. After 2-3 days of vote from the left, vote from the right, vote from the center, whatever happened. Benjamin, I stayed till the very end.
Right.
And the records are there.
On record, officially, Kojo Anyido has nothing against, nothing personal against Asiedu Nketia, even after he beat you, and then John Dramani Mahama. You have nothing against him.
Let me give you a little small brief. So 2018 November is over. Whatever they did at trade fair happened.
Right.
We entered 2019. Asiedu Nketia called me. Kojo, we are going to form a committee to work around nominating our flag bearer. Please, can you come and serve on the committee? Because now we realize that your neutrality, the neutrality that you were preaching, is what is needed so that all the other candidates can warm up to the committee. I said, fine. So I went and served on the committee. The records are there. Kofi Atto chaired that committee. So the committee that elected President Mahama to run again, I was a member of that committee. If I was bitter, the committee would have had records. So we served. But you see, Benjamin, you have to invite me. And so when I come, I'll respect your rules. I won't do anything to.
Mr. Anyido was formally expelled from the NDC in a letter dated July 27, 2021, after investigations were conducted to ascertain the veracity of allegations leveled against him by 2 members of the party. The allegations included misconduct and anti-party behavior. Despite the expulsion, Mr. Anyido continues to proclaim his love for the party and has said that he will not leave. He also disputes he has been properly been expelled from the party. Let's take a break on Joy News Prime. When we return, there is more. Welcome back to Joy News Prime. To the rest of our stories, Anti-Corruption Campaign and Programs Manager at the Ghana Integrity Initiative, GII, Mary Awelana Ada says refusing to pay persons who are fighting corruption could potentially compromise their efforts. Joy News last week exclusively obtained information that the special prosecutor, together with his staff, haven't been paid for nearly 16 months. Mary Ada wants a review of the law setting up that office. She spoke on our news analysis show, Newsfile.
What is going on is just unacceptable. It's disappointing. And again, you would see that government is doing what we have come to say they do more, stick to the fact more than acting on them. The rhetoric is what we are seeing. I think the appetite for allowing this to persist is very low, because we, just like the other gentleman mentioned, it's like we are putting a bone in front of a dog, and that is not tenable. We need to, as soon as yesterday, bring some conclusion to this matter, so that if there are any other issues, we could be speaking to those instead of issues of salary. They should not be spoken about.
Your boss chairs the board. Sule says
yes,
it's not good that she's silent about what is going on.
And so I am speaking from the point of view of the Ghana Integrity Initiative and civil society, that this is not acceptable. And as Sule mentioned, the board chair would definitely, she has done some things which I'm not the right person to be speaking to. She will definitely make that call. And I believe that, as Sule has mentioned, she would, because in the past she has done some of those by engaging civil society to alert them on what has been happening. There is a lot happening which we may not be aware of, but I'm very sure that a lot has happened behind the scenes. It's just that's why I mentioned that the Minister of Finance must, as a matter of agency, deal with this as soon as possible. Not even from the point of view of Parliament, but from the point of view of their own commitment, as Honorable Chiayabua said. They decided that they wanted to fight corruption by this route.
On his part, Executive Director of the Media Foundation for West Africa, Suleiman Ibrahim, quizzed why the non-payment has lingered on for so long, considering the board chair of the Office of the Special Prosecutor, Lindo Forikwafo, is an anti-corruption campaigner. Mr. Ibrahim says it will be an indictment on the board chair to remain in that position with such development. He says she must take steps to resolve the impasse or step aside if she is unable to handle the situation.
It's quite curious to say that some people have been working for the last 16 months and haven't been paid and have not been complaining until perhaps now, and even that complaint is not public. It's the media that has made us aware that these people have been working for the last 16 months. I think it was President Kufuor who once said that, well, people in the public and civil service pretend to work and government also pretends to pay them. So are we having a situation where they are there, they are not being paid, but they are pretending to do the work that they are supposed to do, and the state is also looking on. And something, my final input on this subject is the fact that, like you rightly said, quite often it is civil society that would step in, make all the noise, advocate for the right things to be done. But we have a peculiar situation here because the Office of the Special Prosecutors Board is chaired by, my good friend Linda Ofori-Kwafu, who is a well-respected civil society actor in the anti-corruption space. The question that I ask is, while all these things have been going on, and in fact, she was the chair under Martin Amidu and was reappointed to the board and was made again the chair. I think that I expect to hear a bit more from Linda. I expect to see more action from her because at some point, we in civil society may be accused of being hypocritical. In other words, doing the same thing that governments do. When we are given positions of responsibility, we end up basically complaining about the things that we ought to be doing. So my advice to Linda would be, if she is doing her best as the chair of the board to ensure that the organization is working and is meeting a very strong stumbling block on the part of government, the right thing to do is to quit, just as we demand of our ministers and other appointees who may not be delivering sometimes as a result of certain impediments. Rather than be there, and those of us in civil society blaming the institution for not working, meanwhile we have a colleague there who is the chair of the board. And if you look at the functions of the board, it includes making sure that the Office of the Special Prosecutor works efficiently. And so I think it is important that we highlight that particular part of the involvement of civil society in terms of the board, and not just involvement, but chairing the board. I would want to see more action on the part of Linda, and if it is not working, I think that it is better that she quits, so that when we are complaining and advocating, our voices would be seen as legitimate. Well, if it continues this way, that's the only way, the only option, because at some point, if you are there and you are still complaining, people may not believe you. Because how do you convince me that you've been working for the last 16 months on your own money, the money that you had saved under this current economic situation? At some point, it will become unbelievable. And if it continues, the right thing to do is to quit, so that those who set it up would either...
Martin left, his successor should also quit. Then what? What are we doing with the office?
You heard the Media Foundation for West Africa Executive Director Suleiman Ibrahim. Now, if you're one of those still shocked about the cedi's surprise rally against the dollar and the other major currencies, brace up for more. President Akufo-Addo says the measures which have made the cedi regain its strength will be intensified this week.
In the weeks ahead, the Bank of Ghana will continue with the purchases of forex from the mining and oil sectors to enhance liquidity supply to the market. Continue with a single unified forex forward auction and some modest targeted bilateral support to critical imports. And the implementation of the gold for oil swap transaction, which will significantly remove forex pressures on the cedi.
Advertising is an agent of social change. Advertising reminds audience to take care of themselves when used in the right place and at the right time. And that's according to the Executive Secretary of the National Media Commission, George Sapon, who indicates that there's little patience and tolerance level in the media space. He's adding that for the space to grow, industry players must collectively understand the situation more before airing their content. He was speaking at the Advertising GONG Awards last night.
The GONG Awards is the flagship industry event for the advertising industry in Ghana. The awards event recognizes advertising agencies and industry players who have distinguished themselves over the year in review. Speaking at the awards ceremony, Executive Secretary of the National Media Commission, George Sapong, said advertising agencies must provide the public with accurate information in their promotion of products and services.
In the heat of the matter, the society rose against the menace. But as with all things Ghanaian, our anger came to the end to be continued. From media to law to medicine, from academia to faith to civil society, we seem to have a social vulnerability towards misdirection. This, in part, explains why we continue to have a phenomenon like Agrada. Ghana would make better progress if the advertising industry committed itself as an agent of social change to help transform our consciousness to build trust in Ghana. We need to build trust in our products. We need to build trust in our people. We need to build trust in our future. Colleagues, I want to submit that the struggle to redeem the youth from the hegemonic preference for the foreign, whether it is about dressing or even accents, require collective effort spearheaded by those of us in the media and advertising industry. The plight of the mass of unemployed youth must energize our search for social change in a Ghana beyond aid, and advertising should be the vehicle for this. Advertising should help restore faith in our democracy and democratic institutions, especially as we get into the pre-election year of 2023.
Founder of Brand Africa, in a presentation, encouraged advertising agencies to adopt world-class methods to attract more clients.
The most astonishing thing that happened out of the research is that only 17% of the brands that Africans admire are African. Hence, us Ghanaians, South Africans, West Africans, Pan-Africans, we don't admire anything that comes from us. So it's one of the challenges that I think as a continent we need to work towards. And if you look at the results, 28% of the brands that Africans admire come from North America, 35% come from Europe, the number one brand there being Adidas, number one in America being Nike. Only 17%, as I say, come from Africa, and the number one brand in the whole of continent from African perspective is MTN, and from 20% come from Asia, and the number one brand there is Samsung. And in Africa, and if you just narrow down in Africa, most of the brands come from Southern Africa, West Africa, and East Africa.
The awards ceremony saw agencies receive various awards, rewarding the patrons for their ingenuity and excellence in the discharge of their duties.
And that's how we wrap up the bulletin tonight. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Many thanks for watching. Log on to myjournline.com. There's more of the stories and updates of all the developing stories. Do enjoy the rest of our programs.